What comes to mind when you hear the words racist or racism? If you're a white person with progressive views, chances are you don't believe this term applies to you. You might even equate an accusation of racism as an insult to your character. Or you may be wondering what you can do right now as a white person to fight racism. This book is a great place to start. Welcome to Audiobook Reviews in 5. This is Jana, also known as Yana, and today I'm reviewing White Fragility, Why It's So Hard for White People to Talk About Racism, written by DiAngelo and read by Amy Landon. Dr. DiAngelo is an antiracist educator and University of Washington professor. She defines white fragility as the defensive moves that white people make when challenged racially. White fragility is characterized by emotions such as anger, fear, and guilt, and by behaviors including argumentation and silence. These behaviors, in turn, function to reinstate white racial equilibrium and prevent any meaningful cross-racial dialogue. I hesitated to read this book, although I've seen the cover and references to it many times since it was published in 2018. I was skeptical that a well-meaning white woman would have answers to systemic racism. However, DiAngelo is uniquely positioned to speak to a white audience who relate to her values and political stance, especially in North America. This book is aimed at white progressives, who DiAngelo cites as causing the most daily damage to people of color. She defines progressives as those who believe that they are not racist or that they are more racially progressive than others. These people spend an inordinate amount of time and energy working to convince others that they are not racist, instead of doing the work that would actually help dismantle racism. The key insight that DiAngelo illustrates magnificently throughout this book is that racism is a systemic and an emotionally charged issue for white people. White progressives typically see themselves as unique individuals, self-directed and unaffected by the culture in which we live. White folks tend to think of racism as individual acts of cruelty, and we largely believe that nice, good people cannot possibly be racist. Furthermore, many of us lack meaningful relationships with people of color, so our beliefs about race tend to be informed by media and entertainment versus personal interaction. Do you relate to any of these details? If so, DiAngelo is not out to condemn you, but you will assuredly need to deal with some discomfort if you're going to address your own relationship to racism. DiAngelo's writing and examples of racism in her workshop experience are powerful illustrations of what we are up against if we want to end systemic racism. She even cites examples of her own careless, racist remarks and how she took ownership for those and apologized. She maintains that anti-racism is a lifelong undertaking, and one is never finished. Above all, while discussing racism may take white folks out of our comfort zone, that is not the same as making it physically unsafe to speak about. A mistaken conflation that tends to provoke white fragility. Amy Landon's narration is competent, but some reviews describe her voice as robotic. She definitely sounds like a non-threatening white woman, which I assume the publishers wanted for the main audience of this book. Fair enough. My main criticism of this book is that DiAngelo seems to believe that her audience has a deeply progressive understanding of gender, and presumably other identity categories. I'm a bit puzzled by this assumption, and I don't agree with her that most people understand or believe that gender is a very deep social construct. In fact, I would have liked to hear more of a discussion about how characteristics like gender, age, religion, sexual orientation, and language can complicate and confuse communication and interaction in addition to race. After all, it's a rare occurrence when race is the only differentiating factor when we interact with others. With that said, if you are a white person, you should listen to or read this book. As DiAngelo says, the question is not, am I a racist? But rather, how am I a racist? This audiobook doesn't have all the answers, but it clarifies the first steps that white people need to take to recognize white fragility, white supremacy, and begin to dismantle and undermine its role in our lives. Although this requires ongoing work, it can be incredibly liberating to become aware of. Considering our own influence and the power to undermine racism is appealing. And if you come to these ideas with deep humility and persistent curiosity, you make it possible to bring more integrity to your relationships and interactions, especially with Black people and people of color. That's all for this episode of Audiobook Reviews in 5. Thanks for listening. I hope you'll watch DiAngelo's remarkably powerful, illuminating, and engaging presentation about her book. I've added the link in my episode show notes, and I encourage you to watch that today. I look forward to checking in with you all again soon. Please stay safe and be well.